Rock Stories with the Brummster. And one of the cool things about Rock Stories with the Brummster is I'm not alone. I have a friend in the building.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the greatest rock and roll stories in the universe, all from the fans' perspective. It's Rock Stories with the Brummster. Now, here's the host of the show, my rockin' daddy, the Brummster.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. I love it. I love it. Rockin' right here, giving you the stories behind the scenes, rock stories with the Brummster. Second episode. Today I'm excited. My good friend, a lot of radio friends. I was in the radio business since 1996. And I met a lot of great people who were in radio longer than me and before that, and so many different cool experiences. And because of these great friendships in rock and roll land that the Brummsters had over these years, I am privy to be able to bring some of those behind-the-scenes stories to you, the listener. Thanks for tuning in. Our second episode, first episode, Awesome Stories with Ken Topper, one of my first program directors and mentors in radio. A lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. And like I said, a lot of my guests are going to be radio folks. But some of my guests are just family members and friends who have just phenomenal, cool, amazing, unique stories about their favorite bands and artists and concerts and experiences that they'd like to share with you right here on the show from the fans' perspective. It's Rock Stories with the Brummster, and I'm excited to have on the show today my friend Lloyd. And we crossed paths at a radio station once, but he has a radio past as well. So some of these stories, he's got a radio pedigree that gave him a chance to be able to have access to some of these cool situations. And we're going to take you behind the scenes right now. Welcome to Rock Stories with the Brummster, episode 2. Will Lloyd, welcome, sir. Welcome back to the show. This is your first time. I'm sorry.
Good Lord, I am honored to be with you, my friend. You are a good man, and I really appreciate your show. There's so many stories out there that so many people have. I'm glad that you're actually illuminating them for our friends. Because everybody's met a celebrity or a star, but we always remember those ones that are really real, and that's what's important to me.
Right. It's got to be real because, right, everything we see now is super produced. You know, we've got a YouTube channel too, Rock Stories with the Brummster YouTube channel, or at Spotify or Anchor.fm, and also Sundays at 11 a.m. on rockradio559.com. We're everywhere, but, you know, it's important that it's real. A lot of these super produced, rock stories, videos you might watch just for entertainment's sake, they're very overproduced. And oftentimes it's ex-rockers just trying to make an extra paycheck because of their namesake or their value of their name, right? Still kind of as a brand, if you will. And so these reality shows will bring them on to give their opinions or whatever, right? But these are real stories. These are behind the scenes stories. So talk a little bit. Today, you sent me something about Genesis. Folks, ladies and gentlemen, Will Lloyd, real live stories, rock stories with the Brummster. Will Lloyd here on episode 2. Tell us about your Genesis experience. But actually, first, before that, let the listeners know, how did you get into radio? What's your background?
Well, I've got a fun background. I'm in my mid-60s now, but I'm still a rock and roller. I act like I'm 18, and my wife complains about it sometimes. But I got into television early. I worked as a writer. I worked on Mork and Mindy a little bit as a spec writer, and I worked in Hollywood and films and stuff. But I really love music. I had a band that I toured with in California. But I just love the music, and I love good music. I love it all. I love country, but I'm a rock guy, and I really grew up with that and came through the whole early 70s experience. I've seen all the great bands, really. But, I got into radio, and I worked in Seattle, our number one station up there. It was a country station when country really in the 80s and 90s really grew. And I probably interviewed over 200 people from the music industry. about half of them country and half of them rock. And even some Broadway folks and some good things. I had a lot of, I got on a plane one time. I was in first class flying from Seattle to Arizona, and I got a seat right next to Alice Cooper. And it was just really a cool deal. And what was kind of cool is that I'm a professed Christian, and you wouldn't think Alice Cooper would be a Christian, and the guy is. He's just cool, and he loves golf. And so, I mean, to love golf and be a Christian was just a total for me. And I spent probably 20 years in radio. A K-tip here as well with your previous guest Hopper, my good friend. But I've been in stations in Oregon, California, and Seattle. But I really enjoy the broadcast industry.
Right, and this radio pedigree, a lot of my friends are going to be from radio, and that's what gives them that backstage pass to share with you these behind-the-scenes rock stories with the Brummster experiences that you don't get normally when you check out the normal super produced crap on YouTube or wherever it might be, right? So you're going to get the real stories here. Genesis, not the Bible, but the band. Amazing. Go ahead, talk about that.
Yeah, what was great is music is music, but there's a whole area called progressive music. And at first I thought it was, we heard like Moody Blues coming out. And they had this whole different feel, and then Yes really changed the whole world. As group like ELP and Frank Palmer, that was fantastic. And I actually saw them live a few times, or got to go backstage and meet some of them all, but had a really great time. But Genesis came up in about around the early 70s, and they had 2 or 3 albums, Trespass, Selling England by the Pound, and I just was so into it. And you had this epic album called The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, this wonderful opera about a New York kid going through a kind of a change of the world and growing up. So then, right after that album, Peter Gabriel, the lead singer, was really exotic. He was really out there. He would wear all kinds of masks and fun stuff and all that. So he
even was wearing like his wife's dress and stuff. I mean, he was like super crazy, right?
I just really adapted to this guy. He's just really wonderful. He's really true, and he had kind of a spiritual element to him. And his lyrics were great. So I kind of like followed him. Then he left the group, and I love Genesis, But I ended up just staying with Genesis, listening to him, and his albums came out. And he came out with some amazing stuff. He was kind of like set free. And it was kind of one of those separations where we got 2 good things out of one great idea in prog music.
Right.
Progressive music. So he went on, and then in 79, I was in Orange County, and I found out he was going to literally play in a small club that could seat 200 people. And I lived in this trailer, literally. I'm doing media and video and TV stuff. I lived in this beautiful trailer. And it was only like 500 yards from my house where he was going to play in this California club in Anaheim. So I got tickets in 79 and went over there. And I get there, and about 800 people show up for this 200-seat, basically a bar.
Right.
And we see the big old limo come up and the whole thing. And we're all sitting out there in the crowd, lining up. We're singing all these old great songs from Peter Gabriel's 2 or 3 albums that he had up at that time. But he had one really big hit that I was the biggest fan of. So we all pile into this place. And I remember that, it'd been a long day, and you couldn't even get to the bathroom. It was so packed out. It was literally sardine to the 10th degree. And we're there, and we're all packed in there. And Peter comes out, and he's just it's really hot in there. We're like sweating. It's one of those concerts, that's kind of like a badge of honor. You want to do a tattoo, it's so cool. So he goes into 3 songs, and suddenly the fire department comes rushing in. They come rushing in, and they stop the whole concert. And Gabriel was in a beautiful song, something he did from, I think, one of his earlier albums. And he stopped halfway through, and he's literally up there arguing and pleading with them and trying to be the good guy. And he had this wonderful, British accent. And he thought that might help, but it didn't help with the Anaheim Police Department. So they said they canceled the concert after 3 songs. So we're all pushed out to the curb. Now, I loaned my car to my good buddy because he had a date that night. And he said he'd come back and pick me up after the concert at 10. So I'm I'm there like 4 or 5 times. So we go out and sit on the curb. I spent well over $10 for the concert ticket.
And $10 back then, folks, we're talking a pretty penny, right?
I've got tickets for like $6, for a ticket. But this is back in '79. So we're sitting there, and suddenly we're bummed out. You finally get to see somebody you really appreciated, and he was a good guy. And that good guy suddenly walks out from the back of this little club, kind of a slimy little club. He's walking out there. He's been followed by his agent and said, no, Peter, no, Peter. And he's carrying this Ovation guitar. He comes all the way out to the curb. And we suddenly cut it because we're watching it intently. And I'm telling all my buddies, look, that's Peter. And I'm not a fan kind of guy, but I'm just looking at him as a good person that I appreciated. I felt so bad that they shut down his concert and he wanted to connect with the fans.
After only 3 songs, that sucks, man. You felt for him, right?
Exactly. So I'm sitting there, and he comes over, and we're like we're like 6, 7 guys sitting there. There's a few other people that are sitting around. And he comes out and he sits right next to me. He says, "Sorry, Mike. I'm really sorry about what they did there. I guess the management here, the promoter, really messed up on this. I'm please don't take it over, man. I appreciate all you." And we're just like, "Oh, we love it." Like, hey, is there any song you guys like to hear? And I go, nobody, everybody else is shocked because they're trying to think of the songs. I go, I would love to hear Salisbury Hill. They got this Ovation guitar, which was a really cool acoustic guitar back in the day, one of the first electric acoustics.
Yeah.
And he plays Salisbury Hill. It's been used in so many films too. He plays that thing for us. And I'm just sitting there going, oh my God, this is amazing. So I'm trying to be cool. I'm trying not to look like I'm impressed, and fan. I'm trying to be the cool music critic almost, but it was just so wonderful. And his heart was so real. He wasn't showing off. He wasn't trying to promote himself. He felt genuinely sorry for the fans. And that's what I think every musician should think when they get on the stage, is what the fans appreciate, what they hear, and what they take back with them. Because that's all a musician can do. God gives us the talent and the music and the heart to deliver a message. And maybe we need to hear that day. And Salisbury Hill, so it's just a really cool kind of mythic song, about, really growing in the whole universe and all that kind of stuff. But for me, it was just a neat song that I love just like to dance to. And so it was really cool. So we're going along, and he gets done, and somebody asks him to the song, and somebody's manager says, "I'm sorry, Peter, we got to go. And a limo zips up, and they drag him off of the limo. You see his eyes. He's like, "Sorry, mate, gotta go." He took off. So, and I've met a lot of other big stars, but that was the one time back at that part of my life that I said, okay, that's how a musician should be. Right. And he's really proven it since then. He's been a good guy. He's in good stuff. I don't agree with everything he believes, but I do like what he's done and how he brings about music to us today. Because it's something to keep with you forever.
Peter Gabriel has a concert, 200-seat allowance, 800 people signing up for tickets. My friend Will Lloyd, our guest today on Rock Stories with the Brummster from the fans' perspective. Will Lloyd is there. He gets a ticket, 3 songs in. The fire marshal busts the whole thing up. He's sitting out there, friends, along with other friends and other concert goers sitting out there, and he's got to wait for his ride now for 4 or 5 hours until he gets picked up. And who comes strolling out the front with his acoustic guitar and says, "I'm sorry, mate. I'd like to go ahead and play a song for you." And then right there in front of him, out by the curb, out in front of the venue, plays on demand by request, Salisbury Hill for you, Will Lloyd. I have goosebumps from that real story, man. Peter Gabriel has now gone up 10 notches in my rock and roll respect book here on Rock Stories with the Brummster, Will.
Oh, well, great, yeah. And the only thing he's lost in his whole life is his hair. He's bald now, just like Phil Collins, of course. But, I mean, that was a great time, and it's something we can have. So, yeah. I wanted to tell my story when I first met Josh Brom, but, it was kind of ugly, really. I don't want to get into that.
I'm excited. We have more to discuss with you. I want to ask you in just a moment. Will Lloyd, my guest today, Rock Stories with the Brummster. By the way, check it out, Rock Stories with the Brummster, real rock stories from the fans' perspectives, a new podcast at anchor.fm, Rock Stories with the Brummster. Also at Spotify, and check it out at YouTube as well, Rock Stories with the Brummster, and airing as well on rockradio559.com every Sunday at 11 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. I want to talk a little bit about ELP, but let me jump back for just a moment. My perspective from the normal rock stories we see on TV or whatever, Will, every single time I'm watching them, I've always seen Peter Gabriel kind of not in a bad light, but not in a great light, And this real human being story that you experienced with him and shared with us today, pulling the curtain back behind the scenes in this Rock Stories with the Brummster experience with Peter Gabriel that you had, it shows the human side of him, and it really breaks ranks with what everyone wants to just put together for some sort of Hollywood production about him, right?
Sure. Oh, yeah. Anybody in the rock world, and I've known a few of them, because especially when you're part of a iconic group, you become targets. Everybody in media becomes targets. Politicians, ministers, people that are just trying to do their job. You get attacked, and he got attacked in some way. And again, I don't agree with everything that he believes, but he's done some really good things. He did a lot of stuff for equal rights that are amazing. He's done stuff for really bringing African music. When he did Biko, it was a great song about South Africa and apartheid. And he put a lot of political issues, kind of in a way I think better than Sting did. Sting did a lot of things that were like that, but he really came out, and he's honest, and he's had a marriage that's gone on forever and ever and ever, and he's just been a good guy. He hasn't been a runaround. So and he came out of I think it was called Charterhouse, a school in England, and they were a very highly educated group of people who created the genesis of Genesis, and they came out, and they really. I think they really set their lives well, and he's kind of like the modern day Englishman now that I do respect, and he's done really well, and he's moved on, and he's stayed true to the art, and he puts on a great show. Some of his shows I've seen 2 or 3 of them are just phenomenal. And he entertains the people, and I think the biggest sin you can do is not to entertain people if you're going to be on the stage. If you bore them, that's a sin.
Check it out, Rock Stories with the Brummster from the fans' perspective. Today, our guest, Will Lloyd. First, he meets Alice Cooper on a plane. Then he gets a private performance from Peter Gabriel. And next story, Emerson, Lake, and Palmer. What happened there, Will? Rock Stories with the Brummster. Will Lloyd, our guest today. ELP, brother.
There was an event in California in 1973 called California Jam. It's been abbreviated to Cal Jam 73. It was kind of an answer to Woodstock, although it was a few years late, or to some of the other big things. They like Deep Purple, Sills and Croft, the Eagles, all kinds of folks were in on that. Tower Power, and ELP was last. I remember I went there. It was during kind of a dark period in my life, my senior year of high school, and went there, and I got somehow. I took a group from our high school. We all went to see them at the Ontario Raceway. That's where they do like a lot of races out there. So I didn't go down there. And on that case, I snuck around to the back to try to sneak into the backstage. And unfortunately, at that point, I did drink beer, and I thought I was 6 foot tall, and I could walk back there. So I went back there. I'm trying to get in there, and I remember they were on the other side there, and they just waved at me and said, "Go watch the show. It's better out front," like that. And I was a big fan, so I came back out, and I had a media badge because I was an intern at a location, but I went back out front, and so somehow they put me out front. They picked me up and put me over the top of the chain link fence, and there's actually a video where you can see the fence that was there, and somehow I got plastered against the chain link cyclone fence. In my chest, for some reason I had my shirt undone, and the chain link fence pushed against my chest and left a permanent mark in there for about, well, not permanent, but temporary mark of like little sores, because people behind me were pushing me against the fence. And I'm like 7 feet away from Keith Emerson, who plays the synthesizer. I'm there, and he kind of looked, and I remember him looking at me. I went, he's looking at me. He's laughing at me right now because I was in pain. And these guys are behind me like, rah, 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 and they're doing, I think, Toccata or something like that, or and they're pushing against me. And it was a great experience for that one. That wasn't a real close encounter of the ELP time, but it was pretty close for me. But I really enjoyed it. They got a great kind of sound that really brought Prague to the rest of the world, in a huge way.
Well, it's funny to hear you're sitting there looking at Keith Emerson while you're being sandwiched up to the fence, and you're locking eyes with him, and he's just in the middle of the show just cracking up at you.
Yeah, that's one embarrassing. I do have one more embarrassing issue.
Oh, yeah, please.
And count if you have time.
Yes.
You can cut it out if you want. But
no, that's one thing I got to tell you, folks. Rock Stories with the Brummster, we are not editing, we're letting it roll, so you get the real flavor of of what's going on. You know what I mean?
So I take this is not what I endorse people to do, but I take my brother-in-law. I'm married. I take my brother-in-law to the Roxy on Sunset Boulevard, or Hollywood Boulevard, one of those. Great club to see Brand X. And my other buddy, Phil Collins from Genesis, is the drummer for Brand X. A very progressive, really high-end, really cool band. And they only seat 300 people at the Roxy. So I go there, and I wasn't drinking beer at the time, but my brother-in-law decided he wanted to buy this. There's a thing called Henry Weinhardt's, I think, back in the day. They used to have this kind of if you drank it, you're supposed a little bit more higher fancy intellectual type person.
Right, because back then we didn't have all the IPAs and the dark beers and all that, right? We had Henry Weinhardt's. That's all we had.
Well, we should be doing that, okay? We finally get in, and another time we are literally the table. About, say, maybe, this time it's probably 8 feet away from Phil Collins' drum set. Roxy is a very small stage, beautiful location. And so we're sitting there, and unfortunately, he became rather not able to hold his beer. That's the best way I can say it without being gross, but he kind of lost it. And that the people ran out that saw what he had done to the table, and Phil Collins is looking at me, and I hope he didn't recognize me. Actually, he looks down, and it was horrible. My poor brother-in-law just totally got very sick, and we had to drag him out of the place there. And I'm like going, I'm so sorry, Phil. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. That's like my brother tried to, but at the very last second, he gave me a wink, says, it's all right, almost like an all right, mate. But that was the most embarrassing rock encounter I've ever had in my life.
Hi, nice to meet you, Phil. Hold on just a moment.
And you don't have to edit. You can edit that out if you'd like.
Yeah. He's just going to puke some pea soup right now all over the place. Just a moment. Hold on, Phil Collins. Yes, thank you. Continue your set. Clean up on aisle 5. No. Oh, wow. Wow, that's an interesting... We've gone through the gamut today with our guest, Will Lloyd. Genesis story, personal performance from Peter Gabriel on a canceled concert. That's amazing. Alice Cooper sitting next to him for a flight and having a great conversation about both of their Christian faiths. ELP being sandwiched up against a fence while Keith Emerson locks eyes. And being at the Roxy, seeing Phil Collins playing for a band called Brand X, and then having a family member puke it up and Phil say, it's okay, mate.
After 3 songs again. After 3 songs. I don't know what it is.
It seems to be a thing with you, Will. But you know what's cool is that all of these are up front, close and personal rock stories with the Brummsters experiences. And that's exactly what we want to give you, the listener, on the show. Will, you also, before we let you go, you also perform a lot of wonderful creative duties, helping people live out their dreams with movies and production and animation. Please tell our listeners on Rock Stories with the Brummster podcast here how they can reach out to you if they're interested in taking advantage of some of your Willmation and some of your other creative capabilities.
Well, Willmation at yahoo.com. That's WILLMATION at yahoo.com.
Fantastic. Will, God bless you. Hang on the line for our engineers. Thanks for being on episode 2 of Rock Stories with the Brummster, brother. God bless you. Hang on the line for us, man. Rock Stories with the Brummster at Spotify, Anchor.fm, Rock Stories with the Brummster YouTube channel, and also check us out every single Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific time on Rock Radio 559.com, and me, the Brummster, where I don't just talk the rock, but I rock the rock with the tunage and everything. Your drive home is never the same every single Friday, 5 to 7 at rockradio559.com. Right after my buddy Hopper does Good Times, Great Oldies from 4 to 5. Rockradio559.com, a great station. Check it out. Stay tuned. More great behind the scenes from the fans' perspectives. Rock and roll stories available right here. Coming up shortly, we've got, I think, some shows on Kiss. And, I can't wait to see what else is on the agenda. Rock Stories with the Brummster. Stay tuned.